And the Presidential Climate Commission will today host the Climate Resilience Symposium at the CSIR Convention Centre in Pretoria. Well, the theme is moving the needle on climate change and just transition. So the gathering will bring together senior government officials, academia, representatives of the private sector and climate experts. For more on this now, we're joined by Professor of Sociology at the University of Johannesburg, Patrick Bond. Prof, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So human activity, has always been the main driver of climate change. Talk to us a bit about the steps that can be taken to mitigate the impact on infrastructure.
Yes, well, the infrastructure has fallen apart in places like Cape Town. Basic housing, probably built in the wrong places, but it's evident that the city government didn't invest much in stormwater drainage and pumping systems. The same was true in the city usually celebrated as one of the world's best for resilience, that being Durban. And you remember there was a rain bomb that killed about 500 people in April 2022. And the stormwater drainage systems, the strength of roads, bridges, and especially housing, often built in inappropriate places on slopes or in the riverine areas near the rivers that overflow. These now need to be rethought, and it's convenient that the current meeting of the Presidential Climate Commission follows the Treasury, which had a similar move the needle. But my worry is that they don't need to move the needle, they need a new compass, because mostly the actions, again, looked at by how much money is being spent, is really favoring big business. Toyota, for example, in Durban received about 280 million rand of state subsidies after the rain bomb of 2022. And Toyota isn't making electric cars there. It's still petrol and diesel engines. So the compass is not really pointing in a constructive direction if you want to mitigate the sources of the problem, emissions, whether that be energy or transport.
Let's talk a bit about the impact of climate change on food security. That is also quite critical. What lasting solutions or risk reduction or even response mechanisms are required under these circumstances?
Again, I will ask, is the compass the correct one? Because currently, if you move the needle on our agro-corporate food system, in other words, the big farmers and huge international corporations that handle trade in commodities, they've sucked us into a world market for food where we're exporting a great deal, and some of it's very water-intensive agricultural exports. The water that's embedded might have been better used for food production rather than cash crop, and the food production would be requiring now much more investment in micro irrigation systems, simple boreholes for small farmers. Instead, the compass that we're using is being designed for huge farming enterprises, which have very inappropriately taken roughly 52% of the country's water for export cash crops. And those become very vulnerable when there are huge droughts and we rely too much upon these industries. We're also facing a potential AGOA, Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, sanctions because of South Africa's, I think, very correct position on Israeli genocide, but the United States is very much a partner in that genocide. And with Donald Trump more likely to become the president, I think in early 2025, it's a good chance we'll lose AGOA, and that is huge agricultural export support, that is for especially horticulture and grapes and our wine industry. All of these mean we could be rethinking our food system and have, instead of, let's say, an objective of export cash crop earnings, we should have food sovereignty, which combines food security, so the good agricultural systems, but also a more basic needs-oriented food system that meets ordinary people's needs and is combined with overdue land reform.
So with South Africa's government of national unity, I think, this would obviously need to be some of the key priority areas. What advice can you give the current cabinet, on preparing for, possible climate change incidents? What policy innovations do there need to be? And of course, that financial support, which also needs to be put in place to ensure that this is dealt with.
I know that's the crucial problem, isn't it? That we're looking at a treasury that both the leading parties, African National Congress and the Democratic Alliance, believe should practice a policy of austerity. And they're being really compelled to by the International Monetary Fund, which made a $4.3 billion loan in 2020. But, coming back just as an example of the schizophrenia in this government, when you have a Pan-African Congress leader who's the land reform minister, and you have a Democratic Alliance white leader who's the agricultural minister, well, you're bound to have a huge internal conflict. And I think the main problem for the environment minister, also Democratic Alliance, is that he is in such a, I'd say, fantasy world of believing technology and market systems will solve climate. And really they haven't so far. That is, using carbon markets and offsets, the sorts of techniques of bankers to deal with the climate crisis, and hoping technology will kick in. And we really need a much more vigorous, let's say, a climate justice approach.
Professor of Sociology at the University of Johannesburg, thank you very much indeed. Patrick Bond joining us there. And of course, the Climate Change Symposium will be held from the 12th of July. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.